Doc here with Last Best Tool, and today I've got a cool tool alert, and in this case it's for this particular Milwaukee utility knife. Now, a lot of times Milwaukee is known for its folding knives that it makes a lot of different versions, blade types, handle styles. These are kind of in their Fastback series, I think. And then they've got this guy here, which is actually a standard utility blade knife. And this one has got a few features that I really like. That's why I'm bringing it to your attention. The big thing about this that to me is important for a folding knife is the blade deployment. It literally, the blade falls free when you depress this button. And because it falls free, it's easy to open and close with one hand. And to me, that's critical with a knife. We're used to, the standard utility knives that have this kind of a retraction and extension mechanism, so it's easy to do one hand. But a lot of times, if you're working with a another kind of a knife, you might need two hands to deploy it. I'm going to talk about this guy. This is an utter disaster, this Stanley. So you get a bonus here. Tool alert, both what to get and what to stay away from. This knife right now sells for about $12, which is kind of surprising. I don't know. It's a metal handle, they say. They don't say what kind of metal. I assume it almost looks like it was MIM formed, or metal injection molding. It's getting pretty popular, where they actually use the metal kind of like you would plastic. You can make a lot of small parts with precision really cheap. Some question as to durability, but for a handle like this, I think it seems to be fine. On the outside of the handle, you can see the Milwaukee billboard. They're using Torx fasteners to hold it down. It does have a wire clip. Single position, you can't flip it or rotate it. So if you carry it that way, it would be tip up. As you notice with the blade, when it seats, there's actually a place where it's exposed. They call this a gut hook. That's more of a hunting term, and that's not really a gut hook anyway. In fact, a real gut hook is actually a hook. It's not a knife, and it's designed to pull the entrails out of a bird or something like that without cutting them. It's kind of usually like a little rounded hook, but they call it that. You can also use it mostly for just cutting twine, string, cordage, stuff like that, because it is exposed, but it's fairly safe. There's no way for you to get anything stuck in there very easily. It's got a generous lanyard hole. This thing's huge, which means you could probably clip a small carabiner in there if you wanted to. On to the good features. One is the deployment. Super fast, super easy. Is it legal? That might depend on where you live. I'll get to that here, where that's what the other knives are for. One thing that I also appreciate about this is the ability to remove the blade is nothing that you're going to run into in standard use. Some of them, there's a nice push button on the top that easily allows it to slide in and out, which means you're using it and you might actually release the blade. This one's got a little bit of a push button here that just kind of see it right here. I can depress this little switch here. It's got a cover over the top, and that both allows me to insert the blade and to remove the blade. There it is and snug. They got a little extra wire cutter down here. They think that's what they call it, or wire stripper. But anyway, so it's easy to flip that out, flip it around, get a new one. Remember, you can sharpen these just like you can a knife blade, so you can get a lot of mileage out of one. But then the next thing that I like about this is it's got this arrangement back here that holds 5 more blades. And these are just sitting in there held by a magnet. There's a neodymium magnet down on this end. So these are easy to get in and out. And they're just held in with a magnet, but they're held secure. Not that you're going to, you know, run around with it open. And when this is in the down position, you don't notice it. And when this blade is down, this is locked. So this second part with the blade storage cannot come out, because that's what that little cover also serves as a function for, is to block the extra blade housing from moving. So that's one of the reasons I really like this. Whereas some others, you know, this is a separate piece here if I want to dig in and go after another blade. This one does automatically deploy another blade. If I pull this, push this button, pull this out, slide it forward, you know, it's like a machine gun, just slides another one into the chamber. But this one, you have to do it manually, but it's in a great form factor, given that it's a folding knife. Now, Milwaukee also does some what are called fixed blade knives, non-folders, and I'll do a review on a few of those that are, they're okay, I guess, for what they are. If you want a knife that's kind of a beater, but nothing you'd take into the woods. But anyway, why I said, is it legal? Well, this is known as a gravity knife. And a gravity knife is any knife that you can deploy with either the force of gravity, which is what this one will allow. I mean, look at that. Or a wrist flip. So I can quickly deploy this with a wrist flip or with gravity alone. Now, some places have made that illegal. New York was notorious, and I guess last year they actually finally eliminated the gravity knife law because it was too vague. People could get a knife. I mean, ones like this, these were obvious. You see that? This is what would be kind of considered a switchblade, where there is a switch, and with no other motion, I can deploy the blade. There were, that's a sliding switch. This is a push button switch. This here is called an assist. Nothing happens with the switch, but the moment I start sliding the blade out, there will be a point where it catches the deployment mechanism. So you can see this as it's coming out, and then it launches. This is the standard, you know, as far as nothing happens here, but I can flick it out. So this one is a gravity knife. This is known as a flipper, and it has a deployment lever on the end. So, you know, there's no other assist here, but with a small flick of the wrist, I can deploy this by launching the flipping lever. And I'll be getting into that because this appears to be a flipping lever, but it is not. It's just a pain, but I'll get to that one in a moment. So those are some of the main deployments. There's a couple of other ones. This is like a light assist on this particular one. As I start sliding this, this is the axis lock on a Benchmade. As I start sliding it out, you can see that the blade begins its journey out of the handle. And that, in combination with a wrist flick, will launch it. So this doesn't flick. There's no blade coming out no matter what I do. Although I have heard some people, you know, say that the cops in New York would grab the blade, and then if they can deploy it that way, which a lot of knives with enough force, you can do that. Anyway, on this one, I can actually use a combination of motions and deploy it both in and out. But on its own, nothing happens. So I have to pull this to get the blade started. Back to the cool tool Milwaukee. This particular one, obviously I can use the, you know, piles of these inexpensive blades. 5 on board, 1 here, 2 cutting edges. So I've got potentially 12 knife blades that I can dull or beat up. So that's going to last a while. And then replacements, they come in different quality levels. The Stanley seem to be just fine right now. You know, hopefully. It stays that way. Here's 50 more or 100 more blade uses. And then if I sharpen them, you know, just on a stone, I can quickly hone these guys right back up, depending on what it needs. Could either cut into it or away. These are not precision at the moment, kind of beat up. But anyway, I can get a little bit more juice out of it. So how does that compare to this guy? Now, Milwaukee's known for fixed blades, or blades kind of more traditional, not the removable or disposable ones. What I want you to notice is the design of the shape of the handle, the blade, and the human hand. Okay, so if I take this knife here and I notice where my finger fits in my thumb, okay, notice that they don't line up. They don't do this. When you make a fist or a fist, the thumb is outside the fingers. Okay, so here's the finger, the thumb is outside it. This gives us that control, that dexterity. Okay, so if I take a tool like this, an angle measuring tool, and loosen it, and I put this in my hand, and then think of where my thumb is in relation to my fingers. Okay, like this. You know, where if it was way out here, I'm just going to put it about in the middle. You know, it's about, let's see, if I just grab this, about like that. Okay, that's natural. So I'm going to lock this down. That's the natural angle. So if I go over here and look at this, where they've got a little bit of jimping, you know, or a flat spot or a thumb ramp or anything that's designed to capture the thumb or give the thumb some purchase or placement, that's in relation to where your index finger fits, and then the rest of your hand grabs the knife. That's what's going on here. If I go to a Benchmade, same thing. See that angle? In fact, I'm going to use this tool a little differently here, and I'll mark that angle. I'm going to go this way. So I'm going to the center of the finger indexing point and the center of the jimping, and lock it down. That's the angle. Okay, that's the natural point right there. So, lock it a little tighter. Go to the Milwaukee. I'm going to line that up in the center. That's pretty good. This Milwaukee, that's pretty good. Here to here, that's the angle I'm working with. This one, this whole thing's smooth. That doesn't matter, but that's where it would be. Here's the Benchmade. This one's kind of the Benchmade version of the Stanley. I'll show you in a second. So here we go. So there's the angle. You can see that. That's just about perfect for whatever you're doing, even though this is a striking knife. In fact, it's called the striker. Here is this very poorly designed, luckily discontinued Stanley. So I open it up. Now, this one might cost you $250. This one might cost you 10 or 12 or whatever. I don't know what, since it's discontinued. What's the difference? They look really close. Stanley actually has a total of 1 review on their website for this knife. I actually went and looked it up. I thought, what am I missing here? That's when I found out it was discontinued. There's 1 review, and it's somebody who supposedly is, I don't know, between 45 and 60, and they've been a tool user for, 20 years, and they say, this is the first knife that I've ever bought, and I love it. And I'm thinking, God, that's first of all, thanks for telling me it's the first knife you ever bought, because that answered most of my question right there. But let's take a look at it. Here we go. 1, here's the jimping. That's where your thumb goes. Where does your index finger go? Right here, directly underneath it. In fact, maybe even up against that. They're in the same spot. That's ridiculous. This needs to be out here, but there's nothing out there. There's a bump that gets in the way, so it already feels awful in the hand, and this is really aggressive. This you could sand wood with that. So that's really what's supposed to be holding your thumb, but then your finger would need to be back here, which they did actually put a finger grip point there, which doesn't align with your fingers, but no surprise there. So instead, it doesn't fit in your hand. Now, if you're opening a box, you might not notice, but if you actually use tools on any extended project, you're going to realize this is awful. What else? Well, this is known as a liner lock. Basically, it's a liner inside the scales, which are the sides of the handles, and it interferes with the blade being able to close. That's good. That's a good solid lock. It's used by lots of companies. This is a frame lock. It's the same idea here, except it's the actual frame or outside or scale of the handle that's causing the interference. And this may be the single strongest kind of a locking mechanism, where you pretty much have to either deform this or break the end of it to get it to open or to close unintentionally. Benchmade uses their axis lock, which actually has a transverse bar. I really like it. I've never had any trouble with that. Some of the locking mechanisms on the spine, I've had those fail, but I haven't had an axis lock fail, although you do have to keep them clean and there's a handful of moving parts. But anyway, back to this. Now, when I close this little stud pops up out the back of the spine. Now that should be a flipper. That's what that little mark is, that little thing right here, which should allow me to deploy the knife. When I push that, first of all, I'm immediately assaulted by the rough jimping right here, and it literally hurts. So, and the blade doesn't deploy. That's about as far as it goes, even if you try it really hard. But then, whether it's your thumb or your finger, it actually doesn't deploy, and it injures you. And it's in the wrong spot. How do they not notice all these fails? So, to open it, you could use the thumb stud. I mean, that's pretty standard. Doesn't really flick out. There's a lot of resistance. I could probably temper that, but it's still, I've got a little bit of play here, and it's snug. So I don't know if they used the right kind of washers or any washers down in there. Any kind of a mechanism to reduce friction. But anyway, huge clip. Look at the size of that guy. Compare it to some of these Benchmades here. For a metal clip, that's a wire one there. That's a lot of clip there. It is a deep carry clip too. What that means is that the actual fold at the top of the clip is very close to the top of the knife, so it drops down in your pocket almost completely hidden. Some cops don't like that. If they see that, they might wonder, why are you trying to hide the knife? Not that it's a big deal around here, but I know in some jurisdictions, that's concerning. But anyway, looks like it would be a great knife. Really is a pain to use. I'd avoid this guy unless you want a sacrificial knife, because it just hurts to use. Back to the good. This Milwaukee, I highly recommend it for a utility knife. And I put a lot of force on this guy. Seems to work great. Anyway, Doc out.